Welcome to Time with Death. This video is for informational purposes and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murder of Jesse Salazar. Salazar was shot and killed on Tuesday, August 8, 2017, near Cantera Street and Chastain Avenue in Reseda, according to LA County coroner records. Juan Gomez was subsequently arrested and charged with the murder. The following is the evidence at trial. On June 25, 2016, approximately 13 months before he was killed by defendant, victim Jesse Salazar began dating Ms. Cervantes. After they broke up around April 2017, Ms. Cervantes began a relationship with defendant, whom she called by his gang name Menace. Ms. Cervantes dated defendant for 4 months, during part of which the two lived together in defendant's mother's house. Ms. Cervantes continued to communicate and have sexual relations with the victim during her relationship with defendant, who was unaware of her infidelity. At the beginning of their relationship, Ms. Cervantes and defendant went to a house party at which the victim challenged defendant to a fight, and defendant agreed. The two men went outside and fought. The victim bragged afterwards that he beat defendant up. Defendant saw at least one text message from the victim to Ms. Cervantes in which the victim bragged about the fight. The victim also sent defendant a video depicting the victim and Ms. Cervantes engaging in sexual activity during their relationship. In another exchange, the victim told defendant that Ms. Cervantes had hit him up at midnight the day before to arrange a sexual liaison. Defendant countered by stating that Ms. Cervantes was hitting you up so you could walk out and I could smoke you. When the victim asked defendant whether he was trying to smoke him, defendant replied, "I'm not trying. Keep running your mouth and I'll be in front of your pad lighting you up." On the night of August 6, 2017, Ms. Cervantes met the victim and two other friends at a local elementary school. They all arrived at about the same time. At around 11 p.m., the two friends left the school, and Ms. Cervantes and the victim then moved to a location near the gates of the main office, where the two talked and then had relations. But Ms. Cervantes heard something that she described as leaves crackling against the floor. She felt like she was being watched and looked through the front gate toward the inside of the school. She told the victim there's someone in there. They both shined their cell phone flashlights to look for the figure, but they didn't see anyone. Ms. Cervantes and the victim stayed for a few more minutes, but Ms. Cervantes then told the victim she was not comfortable and wanted to leave. The two started walking on Cantera Street in front of the school towards Reseda Avenue, holding hands. Before Ms. Cervantes and the victim reached the corner at Reseda, a person popped out from the right. He stood about 5 feet from the couple and was covered head to toe in all black. His face was covered and he wore a cap under a hoodie. He had a bandana wrapped around his hand, and Ms. Cervantes didn't think at that point that he had a gun in his hand. She saw him move his hand back and forth between her and the victim. The victim stepped forward, pushed Ms. Cervantes behind him, and the two put their hands up thinking they were being robbed. Ms. Cervantes heard the victim say, "What the fuck?" before 2 shots were fired. The victim then fell to the ground and Ms. Cervantes crouched near him. When she got back up, she saw a gun against her head. She closed her eyes and screamed, "Leave me alone." When she opened her eyes, she saw the shooter running in the middle of the street. She then called 911. On the morning of August 7, 2017, at approximately 1:15 a.m., an officer responded to the shooting scene and observed the victim on the ground with a bullet wound to his head and another wound on the other side of his body. The officer eventually located and recovered 2 .40 caliber shell casings from the scene. Detective Fillmore was assigned to investigate the shooting. He obtained information that defendant's phone had been using cell towers near the elementary school at the time of the shooting. Detective Fillmore also determined that around the time of the shooting, defendant had called the residence located on Satacoy Street. On August 8, 2017, police observed defendant and Nelson Alpaez leave the Satacoy residence and drive away in a vehicle. The officers eventually conducted a traffic stop and arrested defendant. The arresting officer recovered multiple items from defendant's person, including a blue bandana and a black baseball cap. Detective Fillmore video recorded his interview of defendant at the station, and the video was played for the jury. Defendant admitted he was a gang member and that his moniker was Menace, and that he was from Brown Price Sureños. He denied knowing the victim, but admitted knowing about the shooting and assumed that it was the enemies, namely the Bryan Street gang, because his gang had beef with them. After the interview, defendant was placed in a holding cell with Alpaez. Investigators recorded conversations between defendant and Alpaez while they were in the cell, and excerpts of those recorded conversations were played for the jury. During those conversations, defendant told Alpaez, "That whole shit on my phone, it does show that I was there at the time where I murdered that fool." Following the trial, the jury convicted defendant of murder and found the firearm enhancement true. The court sentenced defendant to a term of 29 years to life. Jesse Salazar was 18 years old at the time of death.